Have you ever tried to quiet your mind and accidentally made it louder? Like telling a noisy room to be silent only makes everyone shout more? And have you ever wondered why the more you chase calm, the more calm feels like it is hiding from you? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are exploring a provocative idea often linked to Alan Watts. The idea that you should go out of your mind once a day. It sounds like rebellion. It sounds risky. It sounds almost irresponsible. But if you listen closely, it is actually a lesson about freedom. Not the freedom to become chaotic, but the freedom to stop being trapped inside constant mental commentary. Because most people are not suffering only from the world. They are suffering from the non-stop narrator inside their head. The one that labels, judges, predicts, and panics, even when nothing is happening. So what does it mean to go out of your mind once a day? It does not mean losing control. It means stepping out of compulsive thinking long enough to remember you are more than your thoughts. It means releasing the tight grip of identity, worry, and obsession. It means tasting a simple reality where breathing is enough, where the sky is not a problem to solve, where the body can exist without being interrogated by the brain. And the deeper point, the one that makes this spiritual rather than just philosophical, is that this daily stepping out is not escape. It is training. It is practice. It is a way to interrupt harmful karma in real time. Because so much harmful karma begins as a thought you believe too quickly. Let me tell you a story that makes this real. There was a young man named Adrian who was praised for having a sharp mind. Teachers called him gifted. Friends called him clever. Co-workers called him reliable. And for a while, those labels felt like blessings. But there was a hidden cost that nobody saw. Adrian could not stop thinking. He would wake up and immediately review his schedule like a soldier scanning for threats. He would eat breakfast and rehearse conversations. He would walk to work and predict problems before they appeared. He would smile at people while his mind calculated what they thought of him. He would finish work and replay every mistake. He would lie in bed and plan tomorrow, then plan next month, then plan his whole life. Then panic because the plan could still fail. His mind was like a radio stuck on a station called What If? What if I lose my job? What if they do not like me? What if I said the wrong thing? What if I wasted time? What if I never become successful? What if I become sick? What if I die before I do something meaningful? On the outside, Adrian looked productive. On the inside, he was exhausted. When people suggested meditation, Adrian righted the way he tried everything else. As a performance, he sat down with a timer and tried to force his mind to be quiet. He treated quiet like a trophy. He treated peace like something to win. And the moment he tried to force it, his mind became even louder. Thoughts exploded. Old memories, old regrets, old anger, random fantasies, sudden fear, a desire to get up and check his phone, a desire to scratch his leg, a desire to do anything but sit still. He concluded meditation was not for him. But the truth was that meditation was working exactly as it should. It was revealing how addicted his mind was to control. One day, after another week of insomnia, Adrian went to visit his aunt, a woman named Leora who lived in a simple house near a small park. Leora was not famous. She was not rich, but she had an unusual calm that made people slow down when they spoke to her. She had endured hard seasons and did not become bitter. That alone made her feel like a teacher, even when she did not try to teach. Adrian confessed everything. The anxiety, the insomnia, the feeling that his mind was an engine that never shut off. Leora listened and said, "You are trying to use your mind to fix the fact that you are trapped in your mind." Adrian frowned. That sounded clever but not helpful. Leora continued, "The mind is a wonderful tool, but you are living inside the tool. You are like a person who thinks the map is the territory." Adrian asked, "So what do I do? I cannot just turn it off." Leora smiled. "Good. Do not try to turn it off. Try stepping out of it for a moment." Adrian asked what that meant. Leora said, "Once a day. Go out of your mind, not by becoming reckless, but by becoming present. Give yourself a short daily experience where thinking is not the leader, where sensation becomes the leader, where listening becomes the leader, where seeing becomes the leader, where breathing becomes the leader." Adrian said, "That sounds like meditation." Leora said, "It can be, but do not start with the word meditation if that word makes you tense. Start with something simpler. Start with noticing." She took him outside to the park. It was late afternoon. The sun was low. Children were playing. Birds were making noise. Leaves were moving in the wind. Leora said, "Do not try to interpret any of this. Just see it, hear it, feel your feet. Feel the air on your face. Let the world arrive without your commentary." Adrian tried, and instantly his mind began commenting. "That child is loud. That couple looks happy. I should have exercised more. I am wasting time. This is silly. I have emails." Leora said softly, "Notice the commentary, then return to sensation. You are not trying to kill thinking. You are just not feeding it for a few minutes." They walked slowly. Adrian felt a strange discomfort without constant mental movement. He felt exposed, like someone standing without armor. Then, after a few minutes, he felt something even stranger. Relief, not joy. Relief, as if his nervous system had been gripping a rope for years and finally loosened its fingers for a moment. Leora said, "That is going out of your mind. It is not dramatic. It is simple. It is remembering that life is happening before you name it." Adrian returned home that evening and thought about the phrase again. Go out of your mind once a day. He realized he had been living as if thoughts were reality, as if thinking about something meant it was happening, as if predicting disaster prevented it, as if replaying the past could rewrite it. He started practicing a daily ritual, not a heroic one, a small one. Each morning, before his phone, he would stand by an open window for 5 minutes. He would feel the air, hear distant sounds, notice light, listen to his breath. When thoughts arose, he would label them softly, thinking, and return to sensation. The first week was messy. His mind fought. It offered bargains. "If you stop this practice, I will behave." It offered threats. "If you stop thinking, you will fail." It offered shame. "You cannot even relax properly." He kept going anyway, and slowly, the practice began to change him. He noticed that his mind was not just noisy. It was repetitive. It ran the same loops like a machine stuck in a factory. He noticed how often his thoughts were not new information but old fear wearing new clothes. He began to understand something deeply Buddhist in spirit, even if he was not using Buddhist vocabulary. Suffering is not only what happens. Suffering is also the mind clinging to what happens. Adrian began experimenting with going out of his mind in different ways. Sometimes it was 5 minutes of listening to rain without doing anything else. Sometimes it was washing dishes while feeling the water and the soap rather than rehearsing arguments. Sometimes it was walking without headphones, letting the city sounds be just sounds. Sometimes it was eating a meal slowly, actually tasting it, instead of consuming food and thoughts at the same time. As he did this, he saw a new truth. Overthinking had been stealing his life in small amounts every day. He had been physically present for years but mentally absent. Going out of his mind brought him back. This is where the teaching becomes more than stress relief. It becomes karma work. In Buddhist wisdom, karma is not a magical reward system. Karma is habit. Karma is cause and effect in the mind. If you repeatedly react with fear, you strengthen fear. If you repeatedly react with anger, you strengthen anger. If you repeatedly react with craving, you strengthen craving. And those strengthened habits shape your choices, your relationships, and your destiny. But if you repeatedly practice presence, you strengthen clarity. If you repeatedly practice non-clinging, you strengthen ease. If you repeatedly practice compassion, you strengthen gentleness. Those habits also shape your destiny. So a daily practice of stepping out of compulsive thinking is not only calming, it is karmic redirection. Adrian began noticing how his overthinking created problems. He would overthink a text message and then reply with hidden insecurity, which made conversations tense. He would overthink work and then micromanage, which made co-workers resentful. He would overthink relationships and then become controlling, which pushed people away. He would overthink health and then panic, which made his body more stressed. He realized his mind was not protecting him. It was creating the very suffering it feared. So he started using the daily stepping out as a reset, not a perfect reset, but a real one. When he felt anxious, instead of immediately spiraling into prediction, he would pause and feel his feet. When he felt anger rising, instead of firing off sharp words, he would step outside and listen to the wind for 1 minute. When he felt shame, instead of replaying a mistake for hours, he would wash his hands slowly and watch the water run. These sound like tiny actions, but tiny actions are where lives change, because the moment you interrupt a harmful reaction, you interrupt future consequences. Then something happened that tested his practice. At work, Adrian was blamed for a mistake he did not make. A colleague had missed a detail, but the team assumed Adrian was responsible because he usually handled that area. The manager spoke sharply in a meeting. People watched, waiting for Adrian's response. Old Adrian would have reacted in one of two ways. Either he would have exploded defensively or he would have collapsed into shame. Both would have planted bad karma. Exploding would have damaged trust. Collapsing would have damaged self-respect. Adrian felt the familiar he tries. He felt the urge to explain too quickly. He felt the urge to attack. He felt the urge to disappear. Then he remembered his daily practice. He remembered the feeling of stepping out of his mind and into sensation. He took one slow breath. He felt his feet on the floor. He felt the chair under him. He felt the air entering his nose. This took 2 seconds. But in those 2 seconds, the mind loosened its grip. Then he spoke calmly. He said, "I understand why it looks like my responsibility. Let us check the timeline in the records. I want to be accurate." The manager paused. The team checked. The error was traced to someone else. Adrian did not gloat. He did not shame the colleague. He simply returned to the work. After the meeting, a co-worker said quietly, "You handled that well. I would have lost it." Adrian realized something profound. Going out of his mind once a day had given him the ability to stay inside his values when pressure arrived. That is the real gift. Now let us bring Alan Watts' energy into this idea for a moment, because his style often points to a playful truth. We take our thoughts too seriously. We treat the mind like a dictator instead of like a tool. We forget that the mind produces images and concepts, not the living reality itself. When you go out of your mind, you stop worshiping the image and return to the experience. You stop living in your head and return to your life. The Buddhist angle aligns here in a deep way. The mind creates suffering when it clings, and it creates freedom when it releases. Presence is not a luxury. Presence is the ground of liberation. And liberation is not about escaping life. It is about meeting life without being dragged by compulsive stories. This also connects to compassion. When you are trapped in your mind, you tend to treat other people as objects in your story. You judge them. You use them for validation. You blame them for your feelings. You demand they behave in ways that soothe your insecurity. But when you step out of your mind, even briefly, you can actually see people. You can listen. You can be kind without performing kindness. You can be firm without cruelty. Adrian noticed this too. He became a better friend. He stopped half listening while planning his response. He stopped turning every conversation into a chance to prove he was smart. He stopped interrupting people to correct them. He became quieter in a clean way, and people began to trust him more. This is another karmic loop. Presence creates better relationships. Better relationships create more support. More support reduces fear. Reduced fear makes presence easier. The wheel turns in a wholesome direction. Now you might be listening and thinking, "That sounds good, but I have tried. My mind is too loud. I cannot do it." Here is the truth. A loud mind is normal. A loud mind is not failure. A loud mind is simply a mind that has been trained by modern life to move constantly. If you have spent years feeding the mind with constant stimulation, it will protest when you remove stimulation. That protest is not proof you are doing it wrong. It is proof you are changing a habit. So how do you go out of your mind once a day in a way that is realistic? You do not start by trying to become empty. You start by becoming sensory. Pick one simple daily activity and do it with full attention for a few minutes. Feel your hands. Feel your feet. Hear sounds. Notice light. Notice texture. And each time you catch yourself drifting into story, return. Return is the practice. Return is the training. Return is the rebirth. This is also why the phrase once a day matters. It sets a boundary for the mind. It says, "I will not let you run my entire day. I will give you time to think, but I will also give life time to be lived." And you can expand it gradually. 5 minutes becomes 10. 10 becomes 15. But even if it stays 5 minutes every day can change a life. Because 5 minutes every day proves something to your nervous system. You are not helpless. You are not trapped. You can step out of the storm for a moment. And that moment creates hope. Hope creates discipline. Discipline creates transformation. There is another layer that many people miss. Going out of your mind is also the beginning of wisdom. Because wisdom requires seeing reality clearly. And you cannot see clearly if you are always looking through a fog of thought. When you are present, you notice subtle things. You notice that your anger begins as tension in the chest. You notice that your jealousy begins as tightening in the throat. You notice that your craving begins as restlessness in the belly. You notice the early signs. And when you notice early signs, you can choose earlier. Choosing earlier is power. So this practice is not passive. It is active self-mastery. It is also deeply compassionate. Because a mind that is less reactive causes less harm. A person who can pause before speaking can prevent wounds that last years. A person who can breathe before acting can prevent mistakes that change lives. Now let me share a personal style reflection the way a channel host would, because many listeners need to hear that they are not alone in this struggle. I have seen people destroy friendships because they could not tolerate silence between messages. I have seen people ruin relationships because their mind demanded constant proof. I have seen people burn out because their mind believed rest was laziness. I have seen people panic themselves into illness because their mind treated every sensation as danger. And I have also seen people transform through something simple. I daily return to presence, a daily moment of stepping out of the mind and into the living world. The transformation is rarely dramatic at first. It is quiet, but it accumulates, like water shaping stone. So if you want a deeper reason to do this, here it is. When you go out of your mind, you stop creating unnecessary suffering. You stop planting reactive karma. You stop feeding the habits that keep you trapped, and you begin planting a new kind of karma, the karma of patience, the karma of clarity, the karma of restraint, the karma of compassion. That karma becomes your destiny, because destiny is not only what happens to you. Destiny is what your mind becomes and therefore what your choices become. Let us return to Adrian one last time. After a year of this daily practice, his life did not become perfect. He still had challenges. He still had bills. He still had conflict sometimes. He still had fear sometimes. But he had something new. I gap between stimulus and response. I gap between thought and identity. I gap between emotion and action. Inside that gap, he found freedom. He realized he could feel anxiety without turning it into a disaster story. He could feel sadness without turning it into hopelessness. He could feel anger without turning it into cruelty. He could feel desire without turning it into addiction. That is awakening in everyday clothing. And that is what the phrase points to when it is taken seriously. Go out of your mind once a day. Step outside the prison of thought. Then return with more kindness, more clarity, and more peace. Thank you for spending this time with me. Now I want to hear from you. In the comments, tell me what your mind does most often when it runs wild. Does it worry, compare, replay, or plan? And what is one simple way you could go out of your mind today, even for 2 minutes, and return to the world with a softer heart? If you want more long teachings and stories like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay connected. Your support keeps this space alive and helps others find practical wisdom for real life. Until next time, may your mind be a tool, not a cage. May your heart stay compassionate, and may your daily moment of stepping out become the doorway to a calmer destiny.